Kairo stood at the altar with a firm face. Guests waited in silence. The music played softly through the hall. Everyone expected Liora to walk toward him in her white dress. Everyone expected a peaceful moment. But the woman in front of him was not Liora. It was her sister, Marries. She stepped forward in a matching dress. The crowd froze. A few people whispered. Some covered their mouths. No one understood what they were seeing. Kairo looked at her, then spoke the words no one expected to hear. "I do." Gasps filled the room at once. A chair scraped the floor. Someone dropped a glass. Marries lifted her chin with a small smile. Then the hall door opened. Liora walked in with soft steps, unaware of what had happened. Her eyes moved toward the altar. She saw Marries in her place. She saw Kairo standing beside her. She saw the stunned faces in the crowd. Her breath caught. Her hands shook. Her heart dropped. She stood there, not moving, not speaking, trying to make sense of the moment that shattered her future. This was the moment her life changed, not by chance, but by a choice Kairo made. Her world fell apart right in front of every guest watching. Before the guests understood what happened, the hall shifted from quiet to tense. Liora stood frozen, staring at the man she loved. A moment that was supposed to bring joy now held confusion and pain. Anyone watching her face could feel the weight of that moment. Anyone who has trusted someone deeply knows how sudden hurt feels. Anyone who has ever given their heart to the wrong person understands the shock that leaves you still. So let me ask you this. How do you handle it when the person you trust the most makes a choice that breaks you? Have you ever felt confident about your future, only for one moment to turn it upside down? What would you do if you walked into a room and saw your place taken by someone who once competed with you? These are questions people face in real life. Love brings joy, but also fear, doubt, and risks. A single action, even from someone with good intentions, can change everything. Liora felt the kind of hurt that stays with you. The kind that forces you to question your own judgment. The kind that reminds you how fragile trust is. And viewers, this story asks you to reflect on what trust means and what happens when it's shaken on the day meant to unite two people. The hall remained silent as Liora stood there, trying to breathe through the shock. Guests watched, unsure if they should step forward or stay back. Marries kept her eyes fixed ahead, proud of the attention she gained. Kairo looked torn, but he didn't move. This raises the core problem of the story. Why would a man stand at the altar and choose the wrong sister? Why would someone risk the trust of the person they love on a day that should have been safe, warm, and certain? What fear could push a man to make a choice that looks cruel from the outside? People often judge actions without knowing the hidden triggers behind them. Sometimes a person acts fast because fear takes over. Sometimes they try to fix a threat in the wrong way. Sometimes they hurt the person they love while trying to protect them. Kairo thought he was making a smart move. He thought he was avoiding danger. He thought he was saving Liora from a setback he could not prove. But the way he acted changed everything. This moment at the altar is the heart of the story. It is where trust breaks. It is where questions begin. It is where viewers need answers. As Liora stood there, stunned and hurt, one question formed at the center of this story. What pushed Kairo to make this choice? There were messages he kept hidden, warnings he did not understand, pressure he carried alone. His fear of losing her grew stronger than his reason. He acted without thinking of the cost. Before we move deeper into how and why everything went wrong, I want to welcome you to Lord of Hearts. If you are returning, thank you for being here again. Your support keeps these stories alive. If you are new, I am glad you found this channel. You are about to hear a story filled with emotion, choices, lessons, and the kind of truth life brings when love is tested. Stories like this one remind us that trust is important. Fear can mislead people. Healing takes strength. No relationship is perfect, but growth is possible when people face their mistakes. Before we continue, please take a moment to support this channel. Click the like button. Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you enjoy stories that carry meaning and depth. Your engagement helps this story reach more people. Now, Let's step into the moment that changed everything. Before Liora entered his world, Kairo lived with strict order. His mornings started at 5, his meetings began at 7, and his evenings ended with long reviews of contracts and reports. He kept a schedule that left no room for surprise. He planned everything down to the smallest detail. His home was spotless, arranged exactly how he liked it. His meals arrived at the same time each day. Even his clothes followed a set order in his wardrobe. People around him admired the discipline, but they also kept their distance. He rarely changed plans, slowed down, and rarely allowed anyone to interfere with the way he lived. To many, he looked successful. To him, strict order felt like the only way to stay grounded in a world that moved too fast. Kairo moved through life with a steady, controlled presence. He rarely smiled at work. He kept conversations short and to the point. He avoided small talk and shut down anything that felt too personal. Staff members respected him, but no one dared to get close. He kept his phone on silent during breaks, not because he wanted peace, but because he didn't want to deal with anything outside work. He walked through his office with measured steps and spoke in a calm, firm tone. People often said he felt unreachable. Even in business gatherings, he stood on the side of the room, speaking only when needed. He chose distance as his shield, believing it kept him safe from confusion, disappointment, and mixed intentions. It was easier for him to stay cold than open the door to anything deeper. Kairo learned early in life that emotions complicated everything. His father made choices based on impulse and left the family under heavy stress more than once. As a boy, Kairo watched arguments, promises that faded, and plans that never stayed solid. He decided he would grow into the opposite kind of man. He convinced himself that emotions led to mistakes. They clouded judgment. They created expectations that people rarely met. So he pushed every feeling aside. He focused on results, structure, and progress. He feared the idea of depending on someone. He feared the damage that came with disappointment. Keeping distance felt safer. Staying guarded felt wiser. He believed that staying controlled kept him strong, unaware of how much he was cutting himself off from a life that held warmth, connection, and peace. Kairo built invisible walls around himself long before he reached the top. He kept his thoughts private. He shared nothing about his personal life with anyone at work. His staff only knew what he allowed them to see, and that was usually the same calm expression and the same quiet focus. When people tried to get close, he stepped back. When someone asked about his past, he changed the topic. When anyone showed interest in him beyond business, he shut the door politely but firmly. These walls protected him from disappointment, but they also kept him from feeling supported. He grew used to being his own anchor. He didn't expect comfort from anyone. He didn't trust easily. He thought he didn't need softness, but the truth was, he built those walls to stop himself from being hurt again. Kairo held a strong presence in the business world. His name alone made people sit up straighter in meetings. He handled major deals with confidence, and he never hesitated when making decisions. Investors trusted him because he delivered results without excuses. Staff members said he was precise, steady, and impossible to read. He built his company with long hours, careful planning, and a strict no-nonsense approach. He expected excellence from everyone around him, including himself. People admired his discipline, but they also feared disappointing him. No one ever questioned his authority, yet, behind that strong reputation, he stayed alone. Every success came with more isolation. The higher he climbed, the fewer people reached toward him with genuine intentions. His leadership made him respected, but it also reinforced the distance he lived with every day. Kairo convinced himself that love created weakness. He saw relationships slow people down, shift priorities, and open doors to pain he did not want to feel again. He watched business partners lose focus after breakups. He saw friends step back from their goals because they wanted to hold on to someone who didn't value them. To him, love meant losing control. It meant placing his future in someone else's hands. He feared that caring too much would make him hesitate when he needed to act fast. He believed success came from stability and clear judgment, not from emotional ties that could change without warning. So he pushed the idea of love far away from his plans. He convinced himself he didn't need it. He thought staying alone kept him sharp, protected, and ready for anything. Kairo filled his days with work because it kept his mind busy. As long as he stayed occupied, he didn't have to face the quiet truth waiting for him at night. His phone rarely rang for personal reasons. His home felt large, clean, and empty. He always told himself he enjoyed the silence, but the silence grew louder as the years passed. He poured himself into projects, expansions, and late-night reviews. He treated long hours as proof of dedication, but deep down, working non-stop covered the empty spaces he didn't want to confront. No warm conversations were waiting at home. No one to share small wins with. No one to ease the stress of a tough day. His work became the shield he used to hide the loneliness he refused to admit existed. It was a life built on routine, not connection. Kairo's office stayed quiet that morning, filled with the usual soft hum of computers and distant footsteps. He reviewed contracts when the door opened gently. His assistant stepped in and introduced a new applicant. Liora walked in with steady steps. She held her resume with both hands and spoke in a calm voice. She did not rush her words. She greeted him with a simple nod and waited for him to respond. Her presence shifted the room in a way he didn't expect. She didn't look nervous. She didn't try to impress him with long explanations. She answered his questions with clarity and respect. There was something about her that felt different from anyone who had walked into his office before. He ended the interview quickly, but the moment she stepped out, he found himself thinking about her again. From her first week on the job, Liora carried a quiet strength that stood out in an environment filled with pressure. She never raised her voice. She never rushed through tasks. She paid close attention to details and finished assignments without drawing attention to herself. She moved through the office with steady steps, always polite, always focused. When others panicked during busy hours, she stayed composed. When problems came up, she looked for solutions instead of complaining. Her presence eased tension without her trying to do anything special. She treated everyone with respect, from senior staff to new interns. She listened carefully before speaking. She handled mistakes with patience and corrected them without fuss. Kairo watched all of this from a distance. He had met many people in his career, but her calm, grounded nature made her different in a way he couldn't ignore. Kairo didn't feel drawn to people easily, but something about Liora kept his attention longer than he expected. His interest didn't strike fast. It grew quietly, the same way she moved through her days. Every time he passed by her desk, he found himself slowing down, noticing her focus, the way she read documents carefully, the way she handled calls with steady patience. He started observing small things without realizing it. He watched how she organized her files, how she helped co-workers when they fell behind, and how she stayed late without complaining. Her presence softened the atmosphere around her. He told himself it was simple admiration for a hard-working employee, but that explanation faded each time she offered him a polite smile. The calm in her eyes pulled him in, making him wonder about the parts of her life she kept private. Kairo began to notice details he rarely paid attention to in anyone. Liora arrived early, even on days when the office felt slow. She reviewed documents twice before submitting them. She checked on team members who seemed stressed. She offered help without expecting anything back. He saw her pause to hold the elevator for someone rushing in. He watched her share her lunch with a co-worker who forgot theirs. He overheard her speak with a calm tone when a client raised their voice. Her kindness wasn't loud or forced. It was natural, steady, and present in everything she did. He never saw her try to impress anyone. She stayed focused on her tasks, moved with purpose, and treated people with care. Those small things drew him in more than any dramatic gesture ever could. They revealed her heart without her saying a word. Kairo's attraction to Liora grew in ways he didn't expect. It came from small, quiet moments that stayed with him longer than they should. He noticed how she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear while reading. He noticed how her voice softened when she thanked someone. He noticed how she smiled gently when she solved a problem after hours of work. He found excuses to walk past her desk, even when he didn't need anything. He paid attention to the sound of her laugh during team breaks. He felt an odd sense of ease whenever she was near. There was no sudden rush of emotion. There was no dramatic realization. His interest expanded with each passing day, built on subtle exchanges that made him look forward to seeing her. Her calm presence broke through the walls he thought would never move. Kairo asked her to join him for coffee on a quiet Friday evening after most staff had left. He expected her to decline, but she looked surprised and nodded. They walked to a small cafe near the office. The air felt calm, and neither of them rushed the moment. They sat by the window. Liora ordered a simple drink. Kairo ordered the same, wanting to ease any pressure. Their conversation started with work, but it shifted naturally into small details about their lives. She shared how she loved peaceful spaces. He admitted he didn't take many breaks. There were no long speeches, no forced laughter. They spoke at a steady pace, comfortable enough to pause without awkwardness. Kairo found himself studying her expressions, noticing how her eyes softened when she talked about her mother. By the time they left the cafe, something between them had changed. As they walked back toward the office parking area, the sidewalk felt quiet around them. Liora held her cup with both hands while talking about a simple memory from her childhood. The way she spoke made the moment feel warm and steady. Kairo listened closely. He wasn't used to sharing space like this with anyone. When they reached her car, she placed her cup on the roof and looked for her keys. They slipped from her hand and fell to the ground. She bent to pick them up, and so did he. Their hands touched lightly. It was a brief moment, but it held more weight than anything he felt in months. Liora looked up at him, surprised but not uncomfortable. He didn't pull away fast. She didn't either. Something soft passed between them. She smiled, small and warm. He felt his chest tighten in a way he couldn't ignore. After that night, their connection grew through simple, natural steps. Kairo found himself stopping by her desk more often, not for tasks, but to ask how her day was going. Liora opened up slowly, sharing small pieces of her life. They exchanged light messages after work, never rushed, never heavy. He invited her to lunch one afternoon. She agreed without hesitation. Their talks felt easy, warm, and honest. They didn't jump into anything fast. They built trust through shared moments, small jokes, and quiet comfort. When they walked together, their hands brushed now and then, and neither of them moved away. During late evenings at the office, they sat side by side, working in calm silence. Sometimes she rested her head lightly on his shoulder for a brief second. Each gesture carried quiet intimacy, not loud or bold, but real. He felt himself changing, softening, opening in ways he once avoided. The first year of their relationship moved with steady growth. Nothing rushed, nothing forced. They took their time learning each other's routines, values, and quiet habits. In the first 3 months, they kept things simple, meeting after work for short walks or small dinners. They talked about their pasts only when they felt ready. By the 6th month, their bond strengthened. They spent weekends together, exploring calm places where neither felt pressure to perform. Kairo found comfort in her presence, and she found safety in his consistency. They learned how to support each other without taking away their independence. By the 9th month, they were comfortable enough to share deeper conversations. They spoke about goals, fears, and the kind of life they hoped to build. Their connection grew through honesty and respect. By the end of the first year, they felt like a steady team, moving in the same direction without losing themselves. Their bond strengthened through small routines that felt natural and meaningful. Each morning, Kairo passed by her desk before heading into his office. She greeted him with a warm smile that eased the tension he usually carried. During breaks, they shared quiet moments, sometimes talking, sitting together without the need for many words. In the evenings, she often stayed late to finish tasks, and he found himself joining her, even when he had nothing urgent to complete. They worked side by side in calm silence. Sometimes he brought her a drink without saying much, and she always thanked him softly. On weekends, they cooked simple meals together. She would chop vegetables while he handled the stove. They laughed at small mistakes and shared long, warm conversations afterward. These daily interactions built trust step by step, forming a connection that felt steady, comfortable, and deep. After a year of steady growth, the decision for Liora to move in came naturally. There was no dramatic moment or pressure. One evening, after a quiet dinner at her place, Kairo noticed how tired. She looked from packing work files and shifting between both homes. He suggested she stay for a week to rest. She agreed. That week turned into 2. Her things began to settle into small spaces in his home, not because she pushed them there, but because he made room for them. He cleared a section of his closet without her asking. He set aside a drawer for her. He bought her favorite tea after noticing she drank it often. One night, while they folded laundry together, she looked at him and said softly, "Maybe it's time I stay here for real." He nodded. "I'd like that." Her presence brought warmth into the home he once kept distant. Trust between them grew through steady actions, not promises. Liora trusted Kairo to keep his word because he never made empty statements. When he said he would be home early, he showed up. When he said he would help with something, he followed through. His reliability made her feel safe. Kairo trusted her judgment, her kindness, and her honesty. She didn't hide her thoughts to avoid conflict. She expressed concerns calmly and listened when he shared his. She respected his space when he needed silence, and he respected her feelings when she needed comfort. They both learned how to support without controlling. If she had a long day at work, he was there to lighten it. If he struggled with a tough decision, she offered gentle insight without pressing him. Their trust grew layer by layer, building a foundation that made their relationship steady and real. Living with Liora brought out a side of Kairo he rarely showed. He found himself smiling more, even at small things she said. He eased up on his strict routines and allowed simple joys to interrupt his day. When she joked with him during breakfast, he laughed without holding back. When she rested her head on his arm during quiet evenings, he let himself relax in a way he never did before. He began opening up about parts of his past he had never shared with anyone. She listened without judgment, which made him feel understood instead of exposed. He learned to check on her feelings instead of assuming she was fine. He learned to slow down more, talk more, and express care in small, steady ways. Her presence softened him without making him lose his strength. She brought balance to the life he had tried to control alone for so long. Kairo planned the proposal quietly, choosing a moment that felt personal rather than grand. He knew Liora valued sincerity over spectacle. One evening, after a long week at work, he suggested they take a walk through a small park near their home. The air felt calm, and the pathway lights glowed softly. They sat on a bench by a quiet fountain. Liora leaned against him, tired but peaceful. He held her hand, tracing gentle circles on her palm. After a minute of silence, he turned to her with a steady breath. "I don't want to move through life without you. You bring peace to my days in ways I never expected. I want us to keep building this together," he said, pulling out a simple ring. Her eyes softened as tears formed. She covered her mouth with her free hand, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. "Yes," she whispered. He placed the ring on her finger and pulled her close. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was heartfelt, intimate, and grounded in the quiet love they built day by day. The first signs came quietly. Marries began visiting more often, showing up at Liora's place without warning. At first it felt harmless. She claimed she wanted to spend more time with her sister, but her timing always seemed to clash with moments Liora shared with Kairo. Whenever Kairo was present, Marries became unusually friendly. She spoke louder, laughed harder, and positioned herself in ways that drew attention. She asked questions that made Liora uncomfortable, like how much Kairo earned, how many properties he owned, or what gifts he planned to buy. She complimented Kairo often, sometimes more than necessary. She lingered in conversations that didn't need her presence. She acted warm, but her eyes held a sharp curiosity each time she looked at the couple. Liora brushed it off, believing her sister was trying to bond. Kairo remained polite but distant, unsure why Marries suddenly wanted to be around so much. It was the beginning of a shift neither of them fully understood yet. Mirel's jealousy surfaced in small ways that were easy to miss at first. During family gatherings, she made comments that sounded playful on the surface but carried a sharp edge. She joked about how Liora got lucky, or how she could never handle a man like Kairo. But her smile never reached her eyes. When Liora showed her the engagement ring, Mirel stared at it a little too long before saying it was simple. She hugged her sister, but the grip felt forced. She congratulated Kairo with a tone that seemed polite, yet her gaze drifted over him as if trying to measure something. She often asked Liora if she was sure about the relationship, planting small seeds of doubt disguised as concern. She questioned why Kairo chose someone so reserved, hinting that someone more outgoing would suit him better. Kairo noticed these comments, even if Liora tried to ignore them. Her sister's smile held a shadow of envy he couldn't overlook. It was clear Mirel wanted attention she didn't know how to handle, and the quiet tension only grew as the wedding day approached. The moment Liora announced the wedding date, Mirel changed overnight. She suddenly appeared excited, cheerful, and eager to help with every detail. She offered to assist with decorations, dresses, guest lists, and anything that placed her close to the process. Her voice turned soft, and her behavior seemed supportive, almost overly so. She visited often, carrying small gifts and acting like the perfect sister. She praised the couple loudly, telling everyone how happy she was for them. She hugged Liora more than usual and spoke as though she cared deeply about her sister's joy. But behind that bright smile, something felt off. Her sweetness looked practiced, timed, and selective. She inserted herself into every conversation about the wedding, even when she wasn't needed. She tried too hard to look innocent, too eager to appear helpful. Liora welcomed the effort, happy to see her sister acting kinder. Kairo watched quietly, sensing a shift he couldn't explain yet. Liora had always believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt, especially when it came to family. Even when Mirel acted jealous or insensitive in the past, Liora held on to hope that her sister would eventually show genuine support. So when Mirel suddenly became warm and helpful, Liora accepted it without questioning the change. She invited her into dress fittings, tasting sessions, and planning meetings. She trusted Mirel with tasks that held emotional value, convinced this was a chance for the two of them to rebuild their bond. She believed Mirel's compliments, her smiles, and her sudden interest in helping. Whenever Kairo hinted that her sister might be doing too much, Liora defended her. She insisted that Mirel was trying to be better. She held on to her belief that family deserved patience and second chances. Her trust came from a good heart, but it left her unaware of the intentions hiding behind her sister's new behavior. Kairo noticed the shift in Mirel long before Liora did. Her sudden sweetness felt forced, almost rehearsed. She inserted herself into moments that weren't meant for her. She spoke with a tone that sounded friendly, yet her eyes held something he couldn't read clearly. At first, he tried to ignore it out of respect for Liora. He didn't want to judge her sister without reason, but every visit, every long stare, every unnecessary comment unsettled him. Mirel asked questions that felt too personal. She lingered around him during planning meetings, acting as if she needed his input on things he wasn't involved in. He kept his distance, watching quietly. The more he observed, the more uneasy he became. Something about her didn't match the role she tried to play. The warmth she displayed felt thin, like a mask that slipped whenever she thought no one noticed. He tried to tell Liora gently, but she brushed off his concerns. That made his worry grow heavier, sitting in the back of his mind like a warning he couldn't ignore. Mirel's behavior grew bolder, in small, calculated ways. She never crossed a clear line, but everything she did pushed her closer to Kairo than necessary. During wedding discussions, she directed questions at him instead of Liora, acting as if his opinion mattered more. She often stood a little too close, leaning in as though they shared some quiet understanding. If Kairo entered a room, she adjusted her posture and greeted him with a bright smile meant to draw attention. She complimented his decisions, even ones he barely remembered making. When he tried to step back, she found reasons to pull him into conversations he didn't ask for. She also created moments where she could appear helpful, bringing him things he didn't request or offering assistance with tasks he never needed. These gestures weren't obvious enough to confront directly, but they were consistent. Kairo felt the pattern forming, and every small attempt added to the tension he tried to hide from Liora. He didn't want to disrupt her happiness, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that Marelle wanted something she refused to admit. The house felt different in the weeks leading to the wedding. There were no arguments, no open disagreements, but the tension settled in quiet moments. When Marelle visited, Kairo stayed cautious. When she left, he stayed alert, unsure of what her next move might be. Liora sensed something felt off, but she believed it was only the pressure of wedding preparations. Kairo tried to keep the peace, though every attempt was shadowed by his discomfort. Marelle's smiles lingered too long. Her visits increased for reasons that didn't always make sense. Liora saw the effort her sister was putting in, but she didn't see the strain it placed on her relationship. These shifts created a gap neither of them addressed directly. Kairo didn't want to upset Liora by pushing the issue. Liora didn't want to assume the worst about her sister. As a result, both stayed silent, and the tension continued to grow in the background, waiting for the moment it would show itself. There was no explosion yet, only a quiet unease that deepened with each passing day. Liora and Marelle grew up under the same roof, yet they lived in opposite ways. Liora was the quiet one, gentle in her reactions and thoughtful with her words. She avoided arguments and tried to keep peace even when it cost her comfort. She listened more than she spoke and carried a calm presence everywhere she went. Marelle, on the other hand, lived loudly. She wanted attention, applause, and approval. She stepped into every room expecting to be noticed. When things didn't go her way, she reacted with sharp comments or dramatic pauses that demanded focus. Family members often gave in to keep the house calm, which only encouraged her behavior. This pattern followed them into adulthood. Liora remained steady and kind, trusting people easily. Marelle remained bold, drawn to anything that gave her an advantage. So when the wedding planning began, old habits resurfaced. Liora saw her sister's new sweetness and believed it. Kairo watched the dynamic and understood something Liora didn't. Marelle wasn't used to seeing her sister shine. Attention was something she craved, and losing it never sat well with her. Kairo was in his office late one evening, finishing a round of emails, when his phone buzzed with a strange notification. The message had no name attached, no number he recognized, just a single sentence and an image file. He hesitated for a second before opening it. The text read, "You should look closer at the people around you." It didn't make sense at first. He assumed it was spam or some frustrated competitor trying to get his attention, but curiosity pushed him to tap the image attached. When it opened, his posture straightened. The photo showed Marelle standing outside a hotel lobby with a man he had never seen before. They were talking in a way that didn't look casual. She stood close. The man leaned forward as if sharing something confidential. Kairo frowned. He didn't know what to make of it. It didn't confirm anything. It didn't prove anything. But it planted the first seed of doubt. A seed that would grow faster than he realized. 2 days after the first message, another alert appeared on Kairo's phone. Same unknown sender, same short tone. This time, the message contained several images instead of one. He opened them one by one. The first showed Marelle stepping out of a black car with someone he didn't recognize. The second showed her dining at a quiet restaurant with a different man. The third showed her entering a building with someone else entirely. Each man was a stranger. Each photo placed her in situations that looked secretive. Kairo sat back in his chair, trying to stay rational. He didn't want to jump to conclusions. People met others for many reasons. Photos taken at the wrong moment often misled people. But the timing bothered him. Why now? Why these images? Why send them to him of all people? He tried to dismiss it as someone creating trouble, but a sharp unease crept in. He knew Marelle's history of chasing attention. He knew she liked inserting herself into places she didn't belong. Something didn't feel right, and the pressure of the upcoming wedding made every doubt hit harder. The following message arrived late at night. Kairo had already turned off the lights in his home when his phone lit up again. He picked it up, expecting a work update, but the same unknown sender had reached out. This time, there were no photos. Only a line that made his breath tighten. "Your bride is lying to you." He stared at the screen for a long moment. His first instinct was to reject the idea. Liora was honest, calm, and steady. She didn't hide things. She didn't play games. He trusted her more than anyone. But the message didn't mention Liora by name. It called the bride your bride. And with Mirel's sudden involvement, the words stirred more confusion than clarity. Another message followed right after. She plans to ruin the wedding. She plans to take what is not hers. Kairo felt tension in his chest. He didn't know whether to ignore it or act on it. The warning carried weight he couldn't shake off. Someone wanted him to believe betrayal was already in motion. Kairo tried to push the messages out of his mind, but they followed him through every hour of the day. He sat in meetings without hearing half of what people said. He stared at documents longer than needed, unable to focus. Each new warning made his thoughts heavier. He didn't know who to trust. He didn't know what the sender wanted. He didn't know if the messages were real or someone's attempt to stir trouble. What unsettled him most was the timing. The wedding was close. Mirel's behavior had changed suddenly. The photos placed her in questionable settings. The notes hinted at a plan he couldn't understand yet. He didn't fear losing control of the event. He feared seeing Liora hurt. The idea that something or someone might disrupt her happiness placed pressure on him. He couldn't calm down. A part of him wanted to ignore everything. Another part worried that staying silent could lead to a bigger problem. The doubt grew stronger with each message, forming a fear he didn't know how to explain or handle. He felt torn, unsure which direction to move. Kairo tried to handle everything quietly at first, but the weight of the messages pushed him to speak to Liora. One evening, while they cooked dinner together, he asked about her sister in a cautious tone. He didn't want to accuse anyone. He didn't want to cause stress. He simply wanted clarity. "Has your sister mentioned anything about the wedding schedule changing?" he asked. Liora paused, confused. "Why?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I noticed she's been very involved lately, more than usual." Liora smiled softly. "She's trying, Kairo. She wants to be part of the process." He nodded, but the worry didn't fade. A few days later he tried again, asking if Mirel had any new friends or plans she hadn't shared. Liora shook her head, growing uneasy at his questions. "She's my sister," she said gently. "She wouldn't do anything to hurt us." He didn't want to argue. He didn't want to plant fear in her heart. So he stayed quiet, even though the doubt inside him continued to grow. Each time Kairo brought up Mirel, Liora responded with steady confidence. She believed the best in people, especially family. She thought her sister's sudden involvement came from a place of growth, not hidden motives. When Kairo tried to explain his concerns, she listened, but her trust in Mirel didn't shake. "Kairo, she wants to help," she said one night, as they sat on the couch. "She knows she wasn't always supportive. She's trying to do better." He watched her speak with such calm belief that he didn't want to push her further. Liora held on to hope that her sister had changed. She remembered childhood moments, family memories, and every time she forgave her. Those memories shaped her view of Mirel, making it hard for her to see the subtle red flags forming now. She didn't dismiss Kairo's feelings. She just didn't share his suspicion. To her, questioning Mirel felt like doubting her own judgment. Kairo let the matter drop, but the silence that followed carried the weight of two different truths. 3 nights before the wedding, Kairo received a message that felt different from the rest. His phone vibrated at midnight. He reached for it, expecting another simple warning. But what he saw froze him. The message read, "If you don't act now, she will take your place at the altar." Attached was a short video clip. Mirel entered a bridal boutique alone, speaking with an employee while pointing at gowns similar to Liora's. Her expression looked confident, almost satisfied. She nodded at something the employee said, then touched one of the dresses with a smile that held no hesitation. Kairo's chest tightened. The messages, the photos, the sudden sweetness, the timing, everything crashed together at once. He didn't know if the video told the full truth, but it pushed him past his limit. His fear for Liora grew stronger than his logic. He sat on the edge of his bed, running the clip again and again, each viewing striking him harder. The idea of something happening to Liora on the wedding day felt unbearable. He believed he had to act fast, and that belief led him toward the worst decision of his life. Kairo thought long and hard that night, but his fear didn't let him think with clarity. He believed the warnings pointed toward a threat he couldn't ignore. Every message felt timed. Every image carried weight. Every doubt pulled him further from calm logic. He convinced himself that if someone planned to disrupt the wedding, he needed a way to expose the truth before Liora got hurt. His protective instinct took over, stronger than reason. He believed he had to catch the problem at its source, even if the plan sounded unreasonable. So he made a decision he didn't discuss with anyone. Not with Liora, not with his staff, not with the planner. He created a plan to switch the bride at the altar, to watch Mirelle's reaction, to force the truth into the light. In his mind, he thought he was shielding Liora from embarrassment, danger, or humiliation. But he failed to consider the emotional damage his plan would cause. He acted out of fear, not wisdom, and that fear led him down a path that would break the woman he loved. Before we move deeper into what happened next, let me pause and speak directly to you watching this story unfold. Kairo thought he was doing the right thing. He believed he was protecting the woman he loved. He believed the warnings meant danger, but his reaction created the very pain he wanted to prevent. Many people make choices like this when fear takes over, when the situation feels bigger than their understanding. So let me ask you, what would you do if you received these warnings? Would you trust them? Would you confront the person involved? Would you stay quiet? Or would fear push you into a decision you might regret later? Your thoughts matter. Your views help shape how stories like this reach people who may relate to similar moments in their own lives. Before we continue, take a second to drop your answer in the comments. Share your thoughts. And please support Lord of Hearts by liking the video and subscribing. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. The morning of the wedding felt calm and bright. Soft music played through the hall as decorators added the final touches. White flowers lined the walkway, and warm lights filled the room with a sense of quiet anticipation. Guests arrived in steady waves, greeting each other with smiles and excitement. The venue looked perfect, the kind of place meant to hold memories for a lifetime. Staff moved with steady focus, arranging each detail with care. On the surface, everything looked peaceful. No one sensed the pressure building behind the scenes. No one expected the day to shift the way it would. Everyone believed they were walking into a celebration. Liora spent the morning surrounded by soft laughter from the bridal team as they helped her prepare. Her dress fit perfectly, simple and elegant, the style she loved. Her hair was pinned in a gentle style that framed her face, and she admired the reflection with a quiet smile. She felt steady, hopeful, and ready for the next chapter with the man she trusted. Every time she thought of Kairo waiting at the altar, her heart warmed. She believed the day would be smooth, filled with love and calm moments. For her, everything felt safe. She had no reason to expect anything different. Minutes before the ceremony, Mirelle stepped into the bridal room, wearing a dress that looked strikingly similar to Liora's. The color, the cut, even the soft fabric, matched almost perfectly. Liora paused, surprised but not upset. She thought her sister wanted to feel included, so she welcomed the gesture with a small smile. Mirelle acted cheerfully, complimenting Liora's look with exaggerated excitement. Her tone sounded bright, yet something about her eyes felt sharp, focused, almost too aware of every detail in the room. The bridesmaids exchanged quiet glances, but Liora brushed aside the unease. She believed her sister wanted peace, not attention. A few moments later, two members of Kairo's security team stepped into the room. Their expressions stayed calm and professional as they approached Liora. One of them spoke in a low voice, saying they needed to guide her to a private waiting area for her safety. The wording confused her, but their tone sounded steady enough that she didn't question it. Liora gathered her dress and followed them, trusting that everything was part of the wedding plan Kairo had arranged. She thought it was a simple precaution or a small adjustment. She had no idea she was being moved away from the aisle she was meant to walk. While Liora waited in the side room, unaware of the switch, Marries stepped into position at the entrance of the hall. Guests turned as the music rose, expecting to see the bride. When Marries appeared instead, dressed almost exactly like Liora, a wave of confusion moved through the crowd. She carried herself with slow, confident steps, as if the moment belonged to her. Some guests whispered, unsure whether this was a planned change. Others looked around, searching for Liora. Marries didn't glance at anyone. She kept her eyes forward, her expression calm, almost pleased. Every step she took brought the room closer to a moment no one saw coming. Marries continued down the aisle. Soft murmurs spread through the room. Guests leaned toward each other, trying to understand what they were seeing. Some whispered questions. Others exchanged puzzled stares. A few glanced toward Kairo, hoping his reaction would offer clarity, but he stood still, expression unreadable. The confusion grew thicker with each step. People wondered if the sisters had planned a matching entrance. Others suspected a last-minute decision they weren't told about. No one dared speak loudly, but the tension shifted across the hall like a quiet wave. Nothing felt right. Nothing aligned with what they expected. Everyone waited for someone to explain, but silence held the room. When Marries reached the altar, the priest paused, clearly unsure if she was the bride he had prepared to announce. Before he could speak, Kairo stepped forward with a steady face. He didn't correct the mix-up. He didn't ask where Liora was. He didn't stop the ceremony. The guests waited, holding their breath as the priest continued with hesitant words. Marries lifted her chin, standing beside Kairo as if she belonged there. Then came the moment that froze the entire hall. "Do you take this woman?" Kairo looked straight ahead and answered with a clear, firm voice, "I do." Gasps broke out instantly. A few guests covered their mouths. Others stared in shock. No one understood what they had just witnessed. The side door opened just as the shock spread across the hall. Liora stepped inside with gentle steps, expecting to be guided toward her entrance. She held her bouquet with calm hands, unaware of the scene she was about to face. Her eyes searched the room, confused by the silence. Then she looked toward the altar. Her breath caught instantly. She saw Marries standing beside Kairo. She saw the gown, the posture, the attention. Then she heard the words she was never meant to hear. "I do." Her bouquet slipped slightly in her hand. Her heart tightened. She stood frozen, unable to move or speak. Every guest turned toward her, their faces filled with disbelief. What she saw didn't make sense, but the pain hit her all at once. The moment locked her in place. Liora's chest tightened so sharply she struggled to breathe. Her vision blurred for a second as she tried to process what stood in front of her. Kairo at the altar. Her sister is in a matching dress. The words he had spoken. Nothing felt steady anymore. The room she once imagined filled with joy now felt far away. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded in a way she couldn't control. She felt heat rise behind her eyes, but she held her tears, refusing to break in front of a crowd that had come to celebrate her happiness. The pain settled deep. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was heartbreak, quiet and sharp. A heavy stillness swept across the hall the second Liora appeared. Conversations died mid-sentence. The music faded into the background. Every guest watched her with wide eyes, unsure of what to say or how to react. Even the staff froze, unsure whether to continue or intervene. The silence felt thick, stretching through the room as if time paused. People looked from Liora to the altar, then back to Kairo, waiting for him to explain. But he said nothing. Marries shifted slightly, her posture tightening as the attention shifted away from her. No one dared to move. No one dared to speak. The entire hall stood caught between shock and disbelief. As the silence stretched on, Marries tilted her head ever so slightly. Her expression stayed calm, but her eyes revealed something else, a quiet satisfaction she tried to hide. The corners of her mouth lifted for a split second, a faint smile that didn't match the gravity of the moment. She stood a little straighter, as if the attention settled exactly where she wanted it. Her hand brushed the side of her dress, a subtle gesture of confidence rather than regret. To everyone else, she looked composed. To Kairo, who knew how to read people, the shift didn't go unnoticed. That brief smile told him more than any message ever could. It confirmed the tension he felt all along. Liora's body reacted before her mind could catch up. Her chest tightened, her breath shortened, and she stepped back as if the floor shifted beneath her. The pain felt too sharp, too sudden, and too public. She lowered her eyes, trying to hold herself together long enough to leave with dignity. But the moment she turned away from the hall, the tears escaped. She moved quickly, almost stumbling over the steps as she pushed through the side doors. Every heartbeat felt heavier than the last. She didn't look back. She didn't want to hear excuses or explanations. She just needed air, space, and a moment away from the scene that shattered her trust. The second Liora disappeared through the doors, Kairo felt the full weight of what he had done. His plan, his fear, his rushed decisions, all of it crashed into him at once. The shock on her face replayed in his mind with painful clarity. He didn't see anger in her eyes, only a deep hurt he never wanted to cause. His chest tightened as he stepped away from the altar, ignoring the whispers, ignoring Mirelle, ignoring the stunned guests. Nothing else mattered. He only saw the woman he loved walking out of the hall with a broken heart he was responsible for. He knew immediately that he had crossed a line he couldn't erase. He knew he needed to fix it, no matter what it took. Kairo rushed out of the hall the moment Liora fled, barely hearing the shocked voices behind him. He pushed through the doors, scanning the area for any trace of her. His steps were quick, driven by panic more than clarity. He saw her at the far end of the walkway, holding onto her dress with trembling hands as she tried to move farther from the building. He called her name, but his voice cracked. She didn't stop. She walked faster, tears blurring her vision, pain pushing her forward. Kairo reached her only when she paused near the edge of the parking lot, trying to steady her breathing. He approached slowly, afraid of making things worse, yet desperate to reach her. Liora stood with her back to him, shoulders shaking as she wiped her cheeks. She didn't want him to see her cry, but the hurt was too heavy to hide. Her chest ached in a way she had never felt before. The man she trusted, the man she planned to marry, had stood at the altar beside her sister and spoken words meant for her. She felt exposed, confused, and deeply wounded. Her hands trembled as she tried to calm herself, but the pain kept rising. It wasn't only the public humiliation. It was the sense of betrayal, the sharp feeling that the future she had imagined slipped out of reach in one moment. When she finally turned, her eyes told him everything. She was heartbroken. When Liora finally found her voice, it came out soft and strained. Her eyes were red, her hands still shaking, but she held herself together, long enough to ask the question that had pulled her apart inside. Why would you do this to me? The words weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They cut through him with more force than any shout. She wasn't angry in that moment, only deeply hurt. She searched his face, hoping for an explanation that made sense, something that would ease the weight sitting in her chest. But all she saw was regret. Regret without clarity. Regret without a reason strong enough to excuse what happened. Her voice broke slightly. I trusted you. I trusted today. Kairo felt the truth of her pain hit him harder than any message ever did. Kairo tried to speak, but the words tangled inside him. He stepped closer, lifting a hand slightly before lowering it again, afraid she would pull away. He told her about the messages, the photos, the warnings, the claim that someone wanted to disrupt the wedding. He explained how fear clouded his judgment and pushed him into a rushed decision. But as the sentences left his mouth, he heard how weak they sounded. He wasn't offering comfort. He was offering excuses. Liora listened quietly, but her expression stayed strained. Nothing he said softened the wound. Nothing he described justified seeing her sister at the altar. You didn't even ask me, she whispered. You decided without me. Her voice carried the truth he couldn't escape. He didn't trust her enough to speak first. After hearing his explanation, Liora took a slow breath and stepped back. Her movements were calm, but the distance she created felt final. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. The quiet in her voice held more weight than raised tones ever could. "Kairo, I need space," she said gently. "I can't stay next to someone who doesn't trust me." She held his gaze for a brief moment, long enough for him to see the pain he caused. Then she turned and walked toward the exit, lifting her dress so she wouldn't stumble. Each step she took felt sharp, as if she were leaving behind more than the wedding. She wasn't ending everything forever, but she was ending the moment they had built together. Kairo didn't stop her. He knew he had already taken too much from her that day. The days that followed felt long and heavy. Liora didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't answer the messages Kairo sent. Her silence wasn't cruel, it was protective. She needed distance to breathe, to understand her own emotions without pressure. She spent time at her apartment, staying close to the few friends who kept things quiet and supportive. Kairo, on the other hand, felt the silence like a weight in his chest. Every morning, he checked his phone the moment he woke up. Every night he waited, hoping she would reach out. But nothing came. Her absence made his home feel empty, reminding him of what he risked by acting alone. The silence didn't punish him. It forced him to think about the depth of the pain he caused. Kairo tried everything he could think of to reach Liora without overwhelming her. He sent messages explaining how much she meant to him. He left short voice notes, each one softer than the last, apologizing without excuses. He drove by her apartment more than once, never knocking, only hoping to catch a glimpse that might show she was doing all right. He brought flowers to her door and walked away before she could see him standing there. He wrote letters he never sent, pouring out thoughts he didn't know how to share in person. His nights grew longer, his days unfocused. Work meetings blurred together. Nothing held his attention but the thought of her. Every attempt came from a place of regret, not pressure. But she stayed silent, needing more time than he knew how to give. While Kairo tried to regain Liora's trust, Mirelle stepped into the spotlight without hesitation. She gave interviews to small blogs, hinting that she and Kairo had a closer bond than people knew. She smiled for the cameras outside her apartment, speaking as if she were the true bride. Her words stayed vague enough to avoid backlash, but pointed enough to stir confusion. She claimed the ceremony reflected the truth, as if the moment at the altar belonged to her. Reporters repeated her statements, twisting the story further. She enjoyed the attention, posing for photos, as if the chaos were an opportunity instead of a painful situation for her sister. Her actions added fuel to an already painful situation, placing unnecessary pressure on a story already strained by heartbreak. Kairo stayed silent for as long as he could, but when Mirelle's claims started spreading online, he stepped forward. He released a short statement through his company, clear and direct. He confirmed there was no relationship between him and Mirelle, and he made it known that the only woman he had ever chosen was Liora. He refused interviews and ignored sensational questions from reporters. Instead, he delivered one simple message: "I respect Liora. No one else speaks for me." The tone left no room for interpretation. News outlets shifted their focus, and Mirelle's spotlight dimmed quickly. Her attempts to hold on to attention fell apart once Kairo spoke. His statement wasn't for the public. It was for Liora, a small attempt to set the record straight, even if she hadn't heard from him yet. As the story unfolds, the emotional weight becomes clear. Kairo's mistake wasn't born from a lack of love. It came from fear, pressure, and a rushed attempt to shield the woman he cared about. But intention didn't erase the pain. Liora's heartbreak showed how one decision can break trust in seconds. The silence between them, his regret, her distance, and Mirelle's public behavior all deepened the tension. Viewers watching this moment can feel both sides. Liora's hurt, Kairo's desperation, the sense of loss between two people who still cared deeply but didn't know how to reach each other. The aftermath wasn't loud. It was quiet and heavy, the kind of pause that tests any relationship. Kairo arrived at Liora's apartment early in the evening, long before sunset, and stayed there for hours. He didn't knock right away. He didn't want to overwhelm her. He sat on the small step near her door, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the hallway floor. Every sound made him look up, hoping she might open the door. He stayed through people passing by, through quiet stretches of time, through the discomfort of waiting. He wasn't there to push her. He was there to show her his willingness to stay steady. He didn't know if she would open the door, but he refused to walk away from her again. It was close to midnight when Liora finally opened the door. She stood there in a simple sweater, her hair tied loosely, her eyes tired from days of carrying pain. She didn't look surprised to see him. She had heard him outside, quiet and unmoving, for hours. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them held the weight of everything that happened. Her gaze softened slightly when she noticed the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he hadn't moved from the same spot since he arrived. "Kairo," she said softly, not with anger, but with a careful calm. She stepped aside enough for him to know she wasn't pushing him away, but not enough to invite him in. It was the first small opening, a fragile start. Kairo stood in the doorway, unsure whether to step closer or stay where he was. Liora leaned lightly against the frame, her arms folded, her posture guarded but not cold. For the first time since the wedding, they spoke without tension rising between them. "I'm not here to defend myself," he said quietly. "I only want to be honest with you." She nodded, encouraging him to continue, but keeping her distance. He told her again how fear clouded his judgment, how the messages pushed him into decisions he never should have made alone. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He let every word come out steady and clear. Liora listened, eyes soft yet cautious. The hurt was still there, but so was a desire to understand. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the beginning of a real conversation. When he finished speaking, Liora took a slow breath. Her voice stayed steady, but each word carried purpose. She didn't raise her tone, yet the clarity in her eyes made the message unmistakable. "I'm not ready to step back into what we had," she said. "I need to feel safe with you again. I need to know you trust me enough to talk to me before acting on fear." She explained that she needed space, honesty, and respect for her decisions. She wasn't shutting him out, but she wouldn't allow the past mistake to repeat itself. She drew clear lines, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. Kairo listened without interrupting. The boundaries didn't scare him. They gave him a path to follow. After a long pause, Liora lowered her gaze, then lifted it again with a softness that caught him off guard. Her voice grew quiet, steady, and honest. "I still love you," she admitted. "But love isn't enough to erase what happened. You have to earn me back, Kairo, not with promises, but with steady effort." Her words weren't meant to comfort him. They were the truth she needed to speak for herself. She wasn't closing the door. She wasn't ending what they shared. She was choosing a slower path, one where trust had to be rebuilt step by step. Kairo felt a mix of relief and responsibility settle in his chest. She hadn't let go. But he had work to do. Kairo took her words seriously. From that night on, he approached everything with patience and calm intention. He didn't rush her or force conversations. He didn't overwhelm her with grand gestures. Instead, he showed consistency. He checked on her without crossing boundaries. He sent short, thoughtful messages that asked about her day instead of her emotions. He respected her pace, her space, and her need for quiet. When she stepped outside for errands, he sometimes waited in his car nearby. Not to intrude, but to make sure she felt safe coming and going. He learned to listen more than he spoke. He chose steady presence over pressure. Every small effort became a step toward rebuilding what he lost. Their slow healing began with simple walks. Liora agreed to meet him at a nearby park, choosing open spaces where she felt relaxed. They walked side by side, leaving a small gap between them at first. Kairo matched her pace, letting her lead the direction and the length of each walk. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they stayed quiet, letting the silence feel natural instead of strained. He never pushed for deeper conversations. He waited for her to speak first. She shared small pieces of her day, and he listened with full attention. These walks became their first steady routine again, a space where they could breathe without pressure. Each step softened the tension between them, little by little. As days passed, their conversations grew gentler. They didn't rush into heavy topics. Instead, they talked about simple things: the weather, work updates, meals they tried, and small moments that shaped their days. These talks carried a warmth that eased the distance between them. Kairo kept his tone calm, choosing honesty over perfection. Liora spoke more freely as she felt safer, sharing her thoughts without fear of judgment. Sometimes they laughed quietly at small memories or harmless mistakes. Other times, they paused, letting silence sit comfortably between them. These soft talks reminded them of how their bond began, built on ease instead of pressure. They were rebuilding the trust that had once come so naturally. Kairo knew words alone wouldn't rebuild trust, so he focused on small actions that showed consistency. He brought her warm meals on busy days, leaving them at her door with a note that asked nothing in return. He fixed a loose handle on her cabinet without mentioning it. He sent her a playlist of calming songs he thought she'd like. He never expected gratitude. He never asked for more time than she offered. Every gesture was simple, steady, and thoughtful. Liora noticed each one. She didn't always respond, but she felt the sincerity in the quiet ways he supported her. These gentle acts softened the tension that once divided them. They reminded her of the man she fell for. Their connection returned in a slow, steady rhythm. There were no sudden declarations, no grand scenes. Instead, they rebuilt things through presence, patience, and shared moments that reminded them of their early days. Kairo walked her to her door after each evening out, stopping a few steps back to respect the boundary she set. Liora began to wait a little longer before going inside, giving him small signs that she felt lighter around him. They shared soft smiles during quiet moments. Their conversations held more warmth. The tension that once sat between them faded gradually. Each day brought a new layer of comfort, a new step toward what they once had. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It was real. One evening, after a long walk, Liora invited him inside for a short visit. It wasn't planned, and it wasn't a big moment. She simply felt comfortable enough to let him sit with her for a while. They settled on the couch with a gentle distance between them. The room stayed quiet, lit only by a small lamp. After a few minutes, she shifted slightly and leaned her shoulder against his arm. The movement was soft, almost hesitant, but it carried more meaning than any words they shared. Kairo didn't move or speak. He let her rest, keeping his posture steady so she felt safe. It was the first physical closeness since the wedding, a small moment that carried hope. In the days that followed, something quiet but steady shifted between them. Liora no longer guarded every word. Her shoulders stayed relaxed when he entered a room. She laughed more, often, not loudly, but with the soft warmth he missed. She began sharing her thoughts without hesitation, letting him see the parts of her heart she once protected so tightly. Kairo matched her openness with sincerity. He stayed patient, honest, and steady, proving through small choices that she could rely on him again. The distance that once separated them felt smaller each day. One afternoon, she reached for his hand during a walk, not out of obligation but because she wanted to. That simple gesture confirmed what both of them felt. The trust they lost was returning, slow and natural. Before we step into the next chapter of their journey, let's pause for a moment. Kairo and Liora's story has moved through pain, distance, and slow healing. Their progress shows how trust can be rebuilt when both people choose patience over pressure, honesty over silence, and steady actions over quick fixes. Healing isn't instant. It's a process shaped by small steps and genuine effort. Now, I want to hear from you. What lessons do you see in their journey so far? What does this story teach about patience, trust, second chances, and emotional growth? Have you ever needed time to heal before opening your heart again? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. And don't forget to support Lord of Hearts by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Weeks after the wedding disaster, Kairo finally received the breakthrough he needed. One of his cybersecurity staff traced the anonymous messages back to a competitor he once clashed with. This man had been trying to disrupt Kairo's company for months, sending rumors to board members and leaking false reports to the press. The photos of Mirelle were pulled from public places, edited carefully to appear suspicious. The warnings were designed to stir fear, timed perfectly to hit when the wedding plans were fully public. Kairo felt a mix of anger and shame. He realized the person he feared was never inside Liora's family. The threat came from someone who wanted to see him unravel under pressure. Knowing the truth didn't erase the damage, but it gave him a clearer path forward. He finally understood the gravity of his mistake. Kairo went to Liora's apartment with the evidence in hand. He didn't dress formally or prepare a speech. He only brought the truth, presented in a folder he held with steady hands. When she opened the door, he asked softly if she had a moment to talk. She nodded and let him inside. They sat across from each other at the small dining table. Kairo placed the folder in front of her and explained everything with care. He showed her the message logs, the traced location, the edited images, and the motive behind the scheme. He spoke slowly, making sure she understood every detail without feeling overwhelmed. Liora listened without interrupting. Her expression stayed calm, not shocked, not angry. She simply absorbed the truth in steady silence. When she finally looked up, her voice was soft. "So it was never her," she said. Kairo nodded, the regret still visible in his eyes. Kairo made sure Liora saw the full picture. He explained that the messages never came from Mirelle, and none of the warnings were tied to her actions. The photos were taken in public places, moments twisted to look suspicious. The competitor used her personality against her, knowing she liked attention, and often placed herself in social settings that could be misread. Liora sighed softly. She understood her sister's flaws better than anyone. Mirelle didn't plan anything harmful. She didn't create the messages. She didn't try to sabotage the wedding through secret schemes. Her biggest fault was pride, not malice. She still crossed lines, Liora said calmly. She still wanted to be at the center. Kairo nodded. Yes, but the messages weren't hers. The fear came from someone else. Liora's shoulders relaxed slightly. The truth didn't remove all the hurt, but it cleared the shadow that once sat between the sisters. After understanding the full truth, Liora closed the folder and sat back in her chair. Her voice was steady when she spoke, more grounded than before. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't passive either. She carried herself with a calm strength Kairo admired deeply. "I forgive the misunderstanding," she said, "but I won't go back to the way things were without clarity." She explained that she still needed space between herself and Mirelle. She wanted peace, not competition or emotional strain. She also told Kairo that their relationship needed structure, honesty, and shared communication. No more decisions made in silence. No more choices driven by fear instead of trust. "I care about you," she said gently, "but boundaries protect both of us. I won't let anything push me into losing myself again." Kairo accepted every word. Her firmness didn't scare him, it reassured him. In the days that followed, their connection found a calmer rhythm. There were no heavy conversations, no tense pauses. Instead, they met in quiet places, choosing moments that felt steady and natural. They walked through small parks, shared light meals, and talked about simple parts of life again. Kairo stayed patient, matching her pace without pushing for deeper closeness. Liora noticed the difference. He wasn't trying to rush healing. He wasn't trying to erase the past with grand gestures. He simply showed up with honesty and consistency. Their conversations grew warmer. Their tone softened. She smiled more often, and he relaxed in ways he hadn't in weeks. There was no pressure for immediate romance. The peace between them allowed their bond to settle again, step by gentle step. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady, quiet, and real. Kairo waited until the right moment, not a grand event or a crowded space, but a peaceful afternoon in a quiet garden they often walked through. The sun sat low, casting a soft glow on the path. Birds moved through the branches above them, and the air felt calm. It wasn't planned. It wasn't rehearsed. It simply felt right. They stopped near a small fountain where the water flowed with a gentle sound. Liora admired the flowers nearby, unaware of the shift happening behind her. When she turned, Kairo stood a bit closer than usual, his expression steady but full of emotion. "I know we've been rebuilding slowly," he said softly. "I'm grateful for every step. I want to spend the rest of my life showing you the kind of love you deserve." He extended a simple ring. Nothing flashy, just meaningful. He didn't kneel dramatically. He didn't try to impress. He only opened his heart. "Will you marry me, Liora?" Liora felt her heartbeat slow as she looked at him. There was no rush, no fear, no noise from the world around them. It was only the two of them, standing in the calm space they rebuilt together. She saw the sincerity in his eyes, the patience he carried, the steady effort he had shown day after day. She stepped closer, resting her hand gently over his. This time, "I know your heart," she said softly. "I see the effort, I see the growth, and I see the love that hasn't changed, even after everything." Her voice stayed warm, steady, free of hesitation. She wasn't saying yes because of the past. She was saying yes because of the present they created with care. She nodded once, then again with a small smile that reached her eyes. "Yes, Kairo." He exhaled deeply, relief and gratitude filling his expression. She wrapped her arms around him, leaning into the man who learned to love her with patience, not fear. Their journey wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and now it was theirs again. Before we close this story, take a moment to reflect on everything Kairo and Liora went through. Their journey wasn't shaped by perfect moments. It was shaped by choices, mistakes, healing, and steady effort. Their love grew stronger, not because everything went smoothly, but because they faced hard truths and chose patience over pride. Kairo learned that fear cannot guide decisions. He learned that trust requires calm conversation, not rushed reactions. Liora learned the importance of setting boundaries and protecting her peace, even when her heart cared deeply. Together they showed that love takes steady work and honest communication. It's not a perfect path. It's a daily choice. Now I want to speak directly to you watching this. If this story touched you, if you found yourself thinking about your own relationships, your own moments of trust and healing, I'd love to hear from you. What lesson stood out the most to you today? Was it patience? Was it communication? Was it learning to rebuild after a painful moment? Your thoughts matter. Your voice helps build this community of people who enjoy stories that carry heart, growth, and purpose. So please take a second to share your reflections in the comments. Tell me what you learned from Kairo and Liora's journey. Tell me which moment moved you the most. And if you're new here, welcome to Lord of Hearts. This channel brings you emotional, meaningful stories designed to touch your heart and leave you with something valuable. Before you go, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story filled with love, lessons, and powerful moments. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. And remember, love grows best when both hearts choose honesty, patience, and steady kindness.